thank you everybody for joining us today for this info session about the First Year Abroad program to Italy that'll be taking place this summer. We're going to start off with some quick introductions and then kind of talk about the program, and any questions that you have along the way, please pop them in the chat, unmute yourself and just yell something out. And at the end, we'll have time, kind of open time for questions as well. So Mike, why don't you move to the next slide? All right, so my name is Scott Ozorowski. I am the contact person in the Study Abroad office that helps coordinate this program on the back end, and we'll be working with all of you as you apply for the program and any questions that you have. And I work closely with Mike here to do all the sort of logistics of planning on the program. And then I'll have Mike introduce himself.
Oh, my name is Michael Taffel. Thank you all for coming out. I've been working in the history department for 20 years. And primarily, I teach classes like European history, specifically History 172, which is European history from 1348 to 1789. I've also taught the medieval history, which is 400 to 1400, as well as some focal point seminars, obviously one called The Legacy of Rome and another one called The Ancient Mediterranean World.
All right. And then the second person that's important for you to know is Monica Gunty. She's going to be the staff professional who's also going to help teach some of this course and lead the program to Italy. And she works in the College of Business in the advising office. So the two of them will be the two people leading your program when it goes. So, and the new folks that just came in, thank you so much for being here. Welcome. We were just getting started. Okay, go ahead, Mike. So for the program, sort of a quick overview. The way that this works, this is a study abroad program that will take place for about a week and a half at the start of the summer, right at the end of spring quarter. And the coursework for this, which I'm going to have him go into a little bit more in depth, takes place during spring quarter. So you are basically going to take a class, a focal point seminar class during the spring quarter, which is LSP 112. It's a 4-credit class. Like many of you may be in this fall, a Chicago Discover or Explore class. The same thing happens in winter and spring. There are about 100 different focal point seminars to choose from, taught by faculty from all across the university. And you pick one of those that sounds like an interesting topic, and the focal point seminar basically explores a theme from several different perspectives. And then what we have done is we have added a study abroad component to 6 of those focal point seminars this year. So the Italy program is one of those 6. So it's a 4-credit course that'll take place during the spring quarter. It'll be just like, you know, your other friends in their focal point seminars. You're going to meet twice a week for the full quarter, learning all about this topic. But then the difference is at the end of spring quarter, you and the class will then go abroad with the 2 people leading your class and have this week and a half long study abroad experience. And so you actually get an additional 2 credits for this study abroad experience for the work that goes along with that. So if you do not need a focal point seminar, some majors don't need a focal point seminar, some music, theater, and some CDM majors. It is possible for you to get experiential learning credit instead for the course. Or if you have already taken the focal point seminar, you're able to get the experiential learning credits. And if you're an honors student, honors students actually can receive Honors 102 History and Global Context credit instead, because honors students also do not need the focal point seminar. So if you have questions about that, or you're somebody who doesn't know if you need the focal point seminar or not, you can contact me after this and I'm happy to answer that. Okay, Mike? And then this is just sort of the basic travel itinerary. So finals week will happen, and then it's going to be commencement weekend. And right after commencement weekend, Monday, June 13th is when the whole group will fly together to Rome. And you're basically going to have 5 days in Rome. You'll travel to Florence, 5 days in Florence, and then the group will fly back to Chicago. So that's the basic itinerary. And now, Mike, I'm going to let you sort of take it away to sort of get more in depth about everything that's going to happen throughout the course and on the program.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. All right, everybody, I really appreciate your interest in this class here. And I know it's mostly about, you know, some of the questions you might have for us, but I do have some things I want to talk about before then. First off, you've seen kind of the explanation on both the flyer as well as on the Study Abroad website. But I did want to point out a couple things here, because on the Study Abroad website, it's a slightly longer explanation. And one of the things I wanted to mention here was the second sentence, where it begins, Rome was not only the capital of a large empire that spanned 3 continents, it also became the capital of the Catholic Church, as well as the modern day nation of Italy. One of the themes in this class is going to be the different layers of history. Rome has been able to redefine itself 3 times throughout its long history here. And you've also seen the image Now, sometimes these images that we put on flyers and things like that, you might think is a stock image, that sort of thing, which, essentially it is, but this is a real photo. And what I like so much about it when you blow it up is it really starts to depict the various layers. I mean, it's almost like too much to look at once here. What you're looking at, you see old Roman columns real low to the ground. You see way in the distance, you see the Colosseum. But then we have other strange buildings here, like in the center, a church that was built during the Renaissance, or over here on the far left, a Roman temple that has a Baroque church built right into it. So one of the things that's fascinating about the city of Rome, and one of the reasons I'm so happy you're interested in this, is we really get a chance to see not only ancient Roman history, but the many layers. Even once Rome falls, life continues on. And like I said before, the city is going to redefine itself. Now, if we go more closely here, I just want to share with you a quick map, which you'll see if you take my course multiple times, is just the extent of Rome's influence at its height. This map goes back about 1,900 years. And hopefully, if you have a sense of geography, you know where, Italy and the city of Rome is. But all the land that you see here that's either in the darker green or the lighter green was at one time part of the Roman Empire. And they were able to hold this together for about 500 years. So not only are we going to visit a place per se, the city of Rome, but also you have to consider that Rome ruled over this land and it spread its brand out throughout this land. So it's really kind of imprinted itself, its cultural imprint on this land. Even once the empire comes crumbling down, the civilizations that emerge afterwards are going to inherit things one way or the other from the old Roman Empire. It extends all the way from Scotland, well into the Middle East, into Egypt, North Africa, and as you can see, many other countries here. About 30 modern day countries were at one time part of the Roman Empire. But another slide I really like to kind of give us moderns a perspective of how sophisticated this place was. It's almost as if I took a drone over ancient Rome and was able to take a couple snapshots. Or better yet, we're flying in on an airplane into ancient Rome. This is a model that took over 42 years to create, and it's on display in the city of Rome. And it really gives us, us 21st century folks, a good perspective of exactly how the city looked. Now, when you walk the streets of Rome today, there are some buildings that are very well intact from ancient times, but lots of times it's things like a couple columns here and 3 columns over there, and you kind of have to use your imagination. So thankfully, in recent times, there's been enough people who have been passionate about the subject who've been able to create things like this to really give us a sense. I mean, you can see the Colosseum there in its full glory. A lot of people also don't know another pastime was the Circus Maximus over here on the left. If you look really closely, there's other theaters here as well. This little one, if you can see my mouse, is the Theater of Marcellus, which is now converted into condominiums. So when you go to the city of Rome, although most of this is gone, or most of it, I should say, is underground, you are going to see elements of the ancient city everywhere you look. And those are elements that people saw over thousands and thousands of years, even once Rome as a civilization had come crumbling down. I don't want to spoil this shot too much because you're going to see it a heck of a lot if you take my class. All right, so speaking of my class, if you were to take it, this is a general outline of it. The first 5 weeks of our class, we're going to get into the history of the Roman world, going back to about 700 BCE all the way till about the year 500. So a long 1,000-year history. So you'll get a solid history of the Roman Empire. But then once we get to the second half of the course, that's when we start to see more of the legacy aspect of things. Now, this isn't a perfect outline here because there'll be other subtopics mixed in, but just to kind of give you a sense, once we get to the end of the Roman Empire, we'll start talking about the Roman legacy and how the Catholic Church kind of carries the Roman legacy along. We'll look at the medieval period and how individuals like Charlemagne, a Germanic emperor, is going to call himself Holy Roman Emperor and use the title of Augustus. We'll also talk about the Eastern Roman Empire, which is often called the Byzantine Empire, ruled out of Constantinople. That's going to continue on for another 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Empire. But then once we get to week 8, we're going to get into the Italian Renaissance and a lot of its Roman connections. And you'll be introduced to some of these characters like Machiavelli, the Medici family, some of the various artists like Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael. A lot of that stuff we're going to learn about when we also go to the city of Florence. Once we get to the week 9, we're going to talk about the legacy of Rome during the Revolutionary era. You have various revolutionaries throughout the world, Simón Bolívar, popular Latin American revolutionary, Alexander Hamilton, some of the French revolutionaries, many of them, when they wanted to create a new society, we're looking back to the old Roman Republic. So we're going to take a look at some of their writings and see the connections there. And then once we get to week 10, we'll start talking more about the legacy of Rome and modern Italy and in the world today. So that's kind of a general outline of what you have to expect in the class. Now, since this is a focal point seminar, you will have to do writing. That's the main emphasis of this class. Not necessarily exams and things like that, but a lot of writing. So you'll probably have about 4 to 5 papers you'll have to write throughout this class, 3-4 page style papers. All right. But as far as the highlights of our trip to Rome, now all of a sudden it's June 13th and we're flying over and we have all these things to do. Just to give you some of the highlights here. We're going to see the Roman Forum and the Colosseum. The Roman Forum is kind of a generic name for downtown ancient Rome, what you're looking at right here in the slide. We're going to have a guided tour, see a lot of the different ruins, get a chance to go into the Colosseum. And then we're going to go to the Vatican. You can't go to Rome without seeing the Vatican and St. Peter's, one of the most famous museums in the world. We'll see a lot of ancient Roman sculpture there, as well as St. Peter's Basilica, which is one of the largest churches in the world. And then we're going to take a little trip to the ancient city of Ostia Antica. Ostia Antica here, I think I have an image. There we go, is very similar to Pompeii. Maybe many of you have heard of the famous Italian city of Pompeii, where the volcano went off and covered it up. And now it's one of the greatest archaeological sites, a lot of very well-preserved buildings. Well, due to the nature of time, we don't have time to go all the way down by Naples to go see it. But Rome has its own miniature version of Pompeii, just right outside the city. And we'll be taking a small train there. And what we have before us here is a whole little ancient Roman port city with houses that are still intact, with a nice amphitheater. And it's a really, really beautiful place to go visit. In addition, going back to this slide, we are going to get a tour of some Roman churches. Roman churches have some of the most extraordinary Roman art. And we'll even see churches that on the surface look like a church that was built in the 1700s, still pretty old. But then you go down one level and all of a sudden you're in the church that was built at the end of the Roman Empire around the year 400. And then you go down another level and all of a sudden you're in an old pagan temple to the god Mithras. So some of these churches will really give us a sense of kind of seeing the different layers of Roman history. A lot of other stuff as well, a lot of fun stuff to see. We will be staying at St. John's University campus, which isn't too far from the city center. Beautiful place. I visited myself. But just some of the highlights: St. Peter's and the Vatican, extraordinary architecture there, Ostia Antica I just mentioned. But also one of the greatest things about Rome is its piazzas. It's such a walking city. It's like an endless maze. I've been there 13 times and I still am not sick of it. But there's just, you're walking and you turn a corner and all of a sudden you see this gigantic open space with just people and musicians and cafes and fountains. It's truly extraordinary. Now, just a little fun fact, if you notice, this is a very oval shaped area here. This used to be the old Circus of Domitian, an old Roman emperor. It was kind of like a mini racetrack of sorts. Obviously, Rome fell, and what happened was people just started building their houses into that old racetrack. So now fast forward 1,000 years, and you have this giant open space that's kind of suspiciously shaped like an oval. You'll be seeing a lot of that over in Italy. The Campo dei Fiori, another great open space here. Like I said, it's a terrific walking city, and you'll have plenty of time to experience some of it on your own as well. All right, well, pivoting to Florence here. Florence, Italy is the second part of our trip. Now, Florence is often considered the capital of the Italian Renaissance. So many famous individuals have come out of there: Michelangelo, Machiavelli, the Medici family, Galileo, just a lot of big names coming out of the city here. And it was really one of the great nucleuses of creativity for just a brief little period of time. One of the reasons people love to visit it today is it's kind of a smaller, manageable city, and the skyline virtually hasn't changed in 500 years. What you're looking at right there is the same thing folks were looking at about 500 years ago, give or take some of the modern amenities and a few minor buildings there. But the great church, the castle-like tower of the Palazzo Vecchio. So once we go to Florence, just to give you a few of our highlights here, we're going to be staying at a real nice hotel right in the city center by the train station. It is a 10-minute walk to everything. Great location. We're going to have some guided walks of the city by Florentine experts. We're going to have multiple museum trips, the Bargello. We're going to see Michelangelo's David. We're going to go to the Medici chapels, the Santa Croce Church. So we will have multiple museum visits. We also are going to do a little walking tour of some of Florence's most famous churches. At the same time, we are going to take a little trip up to a hilltop Tuscan town, get out of the city for a little while, to the Tuscan hilltop village of Fiesole, which up in Fiesole, they got a beautiful little church, extraordinary views of Tuscany, including the city of Florence, as well as an old Roman settlement. It's tiny, but it has a theater there that's still in use. And just the way it's tucked away with the mountains of Tuscany behind it, it's just such a beautiful sight. We also have a small little school there we'll be using for some quick lessons and guest lectures. It's called the Mona Lisa School. Feel free to Google it. And it's right in the city center in an old palazzo. And we're going to be having some fun there by, talking a little bit about the Renaissance and things that we didn't quite get to in our class in Chicago. All right, so some of these things I pointed out, one of the things you're going to have to accept if you take this trip is that every time you turn a corner, you're going to want to take a picture. It's going to be outrageous, because everything is so scenic, everything is so old and beautiful. This is just a random shot leading up to that gigantic church that we generically call the Duomo of Florence. The Bargello Museum. This here looks like an old little medieval castle, which essentially it was. It was one of the original government buildings in Florence. Eventually turned into a prison. Now it's a beautiful little museum. So not only are you seeing works of art, but you're also inside an old historic building from about 700 years ago. Other elements, the famous Medici chapels. Some of Michelangelo's most famous work is in this chapels here, and it's some of my favorite. Now, granted, the David, for some of you who are familiar with art history, is probably his most famous, but some of my favorites are right here in the Medici chapels. All right, in the Palazzo Vecchio. And once again, Florence, just like Rome, is an outdoor city. It's actually way more manageable because it's kind of like a big, small town, but there's plenty of giant outdoor spaces. And this kind of is the heart of the city right here. It's the old Palazzo where the government was run, still where the Florentine city government is run today. And it's filled with outdoor art. It's a very unique thing. Lots of times you have to go into museums to see great art. They have actual works of art dating back 400 or 500 years by famous sculptors that are right out in the open. So it's a beautiful open space with cafes, people sipping wine, eating gelato, and the whole city itself is very manageable. You could walk around the whole thing in about an hour, but it's an endless amount of possibilities and nooks and crannies. Fiesole, which I mentioned, is a little hilltop town. Here's a little image of the theater I told you about, the tiny little Roman settlement. There's the little clock tower, kind of the symbolic center of the city there. And of course, the Duomo. The Duomo, you will just see, you can't turn a corner without seeing the Duomo in Florence. All right, folks, so just keep in mind, while in Italy, there's going to be general events every day. Usually those events might last 4 or 5 hours on average. Some of them will be longer, maybe some might be shorter. Some might be in the beginning of the day, and then we meet up again later on in the day. And you're going to be overseas. I'm not going to try to bog you down with tons of homework and things like that, but do expect about 30 to 60 minutes worth of, readings and daily work. There'll be some classroom sessions, as I mentioned, where we'll kind of meet in a classroom. I'll show some slides, talk really quick about some of the stuff we're going to see, but you also will have some free time to explore as well. And if you take this trip, I'll make sure by about halfway through our class in the spring quarter that you'll have kind of a rough schedule. So that way you'll kind of know, generally speaking, when you will have certain elements of free time, just in case you want to make some plans yourself. All right, at that, I could speak for much longer on it, but at this stage of the game, I'm willing to just kind of sit back and take any just random questions you may have. Scott's here as well.
Actually, Mike, why don't we do the last couple slides and then we'll do questions. I'm going to.
Oh, sure.
I
apologize.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. So just some logistical things. I know there might be questions about those to sort of get those out of the way. So the application deadline for this program is February 1st. So you've got some time to be able to apply. A lot of students have already started their applications. I know a bunch of you that are here have already, so that's great. Please don't wait until the end of January to get everything submitted. Get started now, get your things submitted in. With the application process, if you haven't started your application yet, you just go to the First Year Abroad Italy program page on the Study Abroad website. And then on that page, there's going to be a lot of information. And on the main page, you'll see a little Apply Now button. So just click that and you log in with your Campus Connect. And that takes you into the Study Abroad application portal. Once you do that, there's going to be two main things that you have to do in the study abroad application portal. The first is going to be to complete your application questionnaire. And that's a set of questions that just talk about why are you interested in this program? How does it relate to your studies here? A few other questions that it asks you, nothing too complicated. It's also going to ask you to upload your most recent transcript. If you are a first-year student who has just started here at DePaul, like I think most of you probably are, you don't have a transcript yet. So what you can do is one of two things. You can either hold off on submitting your application until January hits and your fall grades are in. And then once your fall grades are in, you can just upload a copy of your DePaul and official transcript there. If you wanted to apply now and get it submitted, then you could also upload a copy of your high school transcript. And then once January comes, we can get from you your updated transcript as well. The second thing you'll need is an online recommendation. And that's either from a DePaul professor or a high school teacher or counselor. So if you've got a professor here at DePaul, I know a lot of times like one of your fall Discover or Explore professors are happy to do that for you. But if not, then if you have a high school teacher or counselor, they don't need to write like a long letter of recommendation. In the little online system, you just put their email in and it sends them a little online link where they just go to a website and answer a few questions about you. So it's not a big time commitment that they have to write you a long recommendation letter. It's a pretty brief online recommendation, but that's something as well you want to give a little time for, make sure to let them know it's coming and don't wait till the last minute to have them do that. Just have them get it done and turned in as soon as possible. And then once you've submitted all of that online, around the application deadline of February 1st, you will hear from either Mike or from Monica, and they will be setting up some brief interviews with everybody who has applied for the program. And oftentimes those are actually in small groups. So it's no pressure. It's just a little time to get to know each other, but nothing that you have to worry about. It's just a small group of you. You'll sort of chat for 20 minutes or so, but that will happen sort of right at the end of January or early February. In terms of scholarship funding, we do have scholarships available for the program, and I'm going to talk more about cost on the next slide. There is no separate application for our general study abroad and first year abroad scholarships. As long as you apply by February 1st, you'll automatically be considered for the scholarship. There are some moments where we sometimes will extend the application deadline for a week or two if we were going to still accept applications, but we do not extend the scholarship deadline. So if you want to be considered for scholarships, make sure that you apply by February 1st. And in this case too, there's been a lot of interest in the Italy program. So I have a feeling that we are not necessarily going to extend the deadline at all. So make sure you have everything in for February 1st. Those scholarships range in cost from $1,000 up to almost the full cost of the program for some students. So they're pretty generous scholarships. We look at your GPA and your financial need to determine who gets a scholarship. So that's one where we work with the financial aid office to see what your financial need level is through your FAFSA. And then we look at your academics, and the students that have the highest financial need and strong GPAs are going to get the largest awards. And then we do our best to work our way down to try to support as many people as we can with need. You will find out if you've been accepted into the program and if you got a scholarship in mid to late February. And so we'll let you know that information very close to each other. And at that point, you then have a couple of weeks to decide if you want to move forward. You do the next slide, Mike. In terms of the cost for the program is $3,175 plus the tuition costs for the 6 credit hours that you take. Now, as long as you don't go over 18 credit hours in your spring quarter, you don't have to pay any extra tuition. These are just going to be regular classes on your schedule, so there's no extra tuition. It's part of your tuition. But like any other quarter, if you ended up overloading and taking 20 hours or 22 hours, you have to pay extra for that. So just make sure to leave some room in your schedule so that we can register you in these 6 credits. But that program fee of $31.75 covers almost everything on the program. It's all of your round trip airfare, your accommodations. It's probably 2/3 of your meals for the program. It's all the breakfasts and about half of your lunches and dinners. All the activities and transportation, your international travel health and accident insurance, all of that is included. So on top of that, it's really just some spending money and smaller kind of things here and there that you might need some funding for, but it's pretty all inclusive. And like I said, with the scholarships, even the smaller scholarships are about $1,000. So that takes care of about 1/3 of the cost of the program. And some of those scholarships go right up to almost the full cost. So if money is an issue, please make sure, apply to the program. There's no application fee or anything like that. So apply, see if you get accepted, see what kind of scholarship funding you get, and go from there and make your decision. All right, next slide, Mike. All right, so that's pretty much it. So if you have questions about the application process or things like that, I'm the one to contact, and my email address is right there. If you have questions about the course and sort of some of the more specifics of the program itself, you can always email Michael as well. But yeah, now let's open it up to questions. So Mike, why don't you stop the screen share and we'll kind of get everyone up there. You can throw something in the chat or just unmute yourself. And I know that there have got to be some questions out there.
Yeah, folks, anything you're curious about?
Yes, the class. Is the class only taught in person at the Lincoln Park campus? Mike, can you talk to that?
They have not scheduled the location yet, but it's like 99% it's going to be probably Lincoln Park. That's how they usually do these study abroad ones. But they haven't scheduled the location yet. But it is in person. It will be it's not going to be online unless there's, whatever.
Yeah, and it'll be, a typical sort of class 2 days a week, kind of like Monday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Thursday kind of class for an hour and a half each time.
Before we get to the next question, Scott,
Yeah.
from your experience, do you know if most of the study abroads have been the class itself is usually in Lincoln Park, or do they do a lot of
it? Depends on the faculty member teaching it. So because you're from the history department, that's usually those are classes on Lincoln Park. So
okay, thank you for that.
How many spots are open? We have 20 spots available for the class and the program. So that is the limit on that. Every year is a little different in terms of seeing how many people apply and are interested. Some years we do have more than 20 people who will apply for the spot, so it can be a competitive process. If that does happen, we will be able to accept 20 students into the program, and then other students may be put on a wait list. Not everybody who's initially accepted is able to move forward. We have some students maybe who are hoping for more scholarship funding and didn't get it, or maybe they've applied and then once they kind of think about it, they've decided against it for some reason. So oftentimes we are able to let some of the students from the wait list onto the program. They just kind of have to be a little bit patient as we sort of sort through things. Also, if there are more than 20 students who apply and we've got a wait list, if we have spots available on one of the other summer programs, that's always something that we can look at doing. So I would strongly encourage you, I'm thrilled that you're excited about the Italy program, but take a look at the other 3 summer first year abroad programs that are going to England, Jerusalem, and Scotland. In the application, one of the questions talks about what would your second choice or backup choice programs be. And so if it's a situation where you are waitlisted for this program, but we have spots available still in Jerusalem, for example, we might say, hey, we've got a spot available there. Would you be interested in that? And we move your application to that program. Our goal is that everybody who is interested and qualified to be able to want to do one of these programs, we want you to be able to do one, hopefully your first choice, but if not, hopefully one of the other options. Other questions?
Anything you're curious about?
Logistical things about on the ground. I guess one thing I'll also say as well, Monica, who's not here, is going to also be helping teach a portion of the class. The majority of your class is going to be talking about the topics that Michael just talked about, but you are going to have a handful of class sessions called Global Hour, which are going to be preparing you for the study abroad experience, where Monica is going to be leading those, getting to know each other as a group, learning about cultural things about Italy, about how to budget, how to pack, health and safety preparation, travel preparation. So some great pieces of the class that are going to really get the group to know each other and get really, really prepared. There are some people in the class who may have a lot of experience traveling and other people who may have had very little experience traveling. So it's a chance for everybody to learn as much as they can and kind of get prepared to have a really successful experience once they get on that plane in the middle of June.
And since 5 of those classes will be about, what Scott had just mentioned here, we'll be losing out on a little bit of some of the content that I traditionally do when I run this course when it's not a study abroad, hence why we're going to have a little classroom time while we're over in Italy there, but it'll be relatively minimal, but I do want to fill in some of the important blanks.
And we had a question here about the 2-credit class. Basically for the 2-credit class, the 2-credit class is your study abroad program. So that doesn't meet at certain times or anything like that. Before you even get on the plane, you will have completed the 4-credit focal point seminar class. That additional 2 credits, basically your grade comes from the participation and the assignments and writings and things that you'll do while you're abroad. So there's no extra coursework on top of it. It's the things that you're doing while you're abroad that are the grade for that extra 2 credits. Living situation. Yep. Basically, it's going to be shared rooms, typically 2 students to a room. When you're in Rome, we're going to be at the St. John's University Rome campus. They've got a campus in Rome and they've got residence halls there. So everybody will be in the residence halls at St. John's, typically 2 people to a room. And then in Florence, it will be a hotel, as Michael said, right downtown Florence. Again, typically 2 people to a room. But plan on shared accommodations with one other student in the program. And prior to going, Michael and Monica will work to kind of figure out what the roommate situation is in terms of making good matches and taking your input into that. You may be with the same person in both places, or it may be a situation where you have a different roommate in Rome, different roommate in Florence. And that's something that they'll kind of work out before you go. Other questions? All right. Well, we will stay around for a few minutes. So if anyone does want to stick around with a question or have kind of a one-on-one conversation, we're happy to do that. For those of you who've started applications, awesome, very excited. If you have not yet, go to the Italy website, click the Apply Now button, get your application started. And again, if you have any questions along the way, we'd love to answer them. And we're really excited about your interest in the programs. So thank you again. And again, stick around if you have any additional questions.